Welcome everybody to this meeting of the extraordinary meeting of the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel. I declare this extraordinary meeting of the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel of the 15th of July open at approximately 11 a.m. My name is Stephen Lehman and I'll be the chair of today's extraordinary meeting. Also sitting are expert members Linda Kelly, Stephen Leith. We will be joining us, the panel electronically later, but isn't present at the moment. And we have community members Richard Colley and Tony Neal. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call the Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. Before I go any further, can I ask everyone please turn their mobile phones to silent, and I'll do the same. There are no apologies for today's meeting, and there are no declarations of interest from members of the panel. All panel members have read the business paper, received a briefing from council staff, received copies of public submissions and reviewed the list of properties, the subject of the report today. The panel is charged with considering the results of the public exhibition of the independent peer review of the Draft Community Heritage Study 2021 to 2023. There are a number of registered speakers today and the time limit for each speaker is 3 minutes. I ask that each speaker gives their name and address and or identifies the item to which they wish to speak. The panel members may have questions for the speakers once they've finished their presentation, so please remain seated to see if there are any questions. Please note that once you've made your presentation and answered any questions from the panel, that you will not be given another opportunity to speak at this meeting unless invited by the panel. I ask that all speakers be heard in silence and that courtesy and respect be observed throughout the meeting. Following the conclusion of the public meeting, the panel will move into closed session to deliberate. I have a list of speakers, and first on this list is Mrs. Senwen Kirk Lennox? Senwen, I beg your pardon? Never know if it's a ch or a c.
Thank you. Better?
If you could start with your name and address.
My name is Senwen Kirk Lennox. My husband Richard and I live and are the owners of 7 Links Road, Burradoo, which is item 289 on the proposed heritage listing. Thank you. My husband and I want to make it clear that we object to both the proposed listing of 7 Links Road, Burradoo, and its inclusion as a contributory item within the proposed Links Road conservation area. We were advised during community consultation period last October to seek advice of a heritage consultant. We also note that during the recent panel interactions on 29 May this year, the panel both encouraged and acknowledged the credibility of this evidence-based approach to other affected owners. For the record, we engaged a heritage consultant to provide expert advice and submitted this report with our initial submission and again as part of our formal submission, which was an objection. We appointed Megan Jones, who has over 40 years' experience in the provision of architectural and heritage services. We would like to make it clear that to the panel that Megan Jones is an extremely qualified in the area of heritage assessments. Megan was principal of Howard Tanner and Associates, which then became TKD, for many years. Megan has been a member of the New South Wales Heritage Council and has been a heritage expert on several local planning panels, much like this one. We believe her credentials are outstanding, and we felt the peer review commentary was unprofessionally dismissive. Megan used an evidence-based approach to assessing the proposed listing, concluding that there was no justification for listing 7 Links Road, Burradoo as a heritage item or a contributor item within the Links Road and Golf Course Conservation Area. Despite this, Council's peer reviewer, Mr Strauss, appears to have entirely dismissed Megan Jones' evidence-based recommendation, stating, "It's not part of my brief to provide a detailed rebuttal of material." This is not good enough, especially as we were encouraged to seek professional advice by Council. I implore the panel to review again Megan Jones' report. Further to our submission, I would like to point out the peer review talks about the home's presentation to Links Road and how it contributes to the character of the streetscape. Our home is located opposite the Carrara Estate, a significant over-50s retirement development. It is not typical of the remaining Links Road homes adjacent to the Barrel Golf Course and has a subdivision pattern inconsistent with the remaining proposed Links Road conservation area. In the past 12 months, the garden has been substantially renovated to deal with aged trees that posed a risk to infrastructure and personal safety, and to address oversight water flow from adjoining properties. The garden mentioned in the evidence sheets has no heritage significance. The interior of the house has been substantially stripped of heritage significance by past owners, something we hope to address, and the northern facade has been renovated to its original state by us over the last year, with significant investment in repointing. Pragmatically, our concerns may be alleviated if we had a clear understanding of what item is listed so that we were informed about how we maintain 7 Links Road as a functioning, livable home now and into the future. I'm almost done. So I have 2 things to ask the panel to consider. We ask for a deferral of item 289 to allow a fulsome review of the submission of our expert heritage consultant. And should this be denied, as the proposed listing may be pushed through, my husband and I are concerned about our objections will not be critically evaluated. We ask that the listed item clearly and only identifies the northern presentation of the home to Links Road as identified in the evidence sheet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the panel for this speaker?
Can you just clarify that last point that you made? So the 2 things you were asking was, one, you'd like a deferral, but if the deferral wasn't
Forthcoming?
then you wanted it to identify what exactly? Just
Okay,
the
so
northern facade, did you say?
So we're not confident that we'll get the review we've requested. So being pragmatic, we were asked that the item, when it's listed, very clearly only identifies the northern presentation of the home to Links Road.
Are there any other questions or
Yeah,
comments?
just a clarification. The northern aspect of that's the one that you have just restored, is that right?
Yes, it is,
Right. That by repointing it.
by repointing.
Thank
yes.
I think that's all.
Thank you.
The panel will take that into consideration. Thank you. Next on my list, I have Barry Anstey. Could you come forward, please? Could you give us your name and address, please?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Barry Anstey is my name. I live at 48 Sir Charles Moses Lane, Woodlands. I have a degree in architecture with honours from the University of New South Wales. I've been involved in my thesis was done before Professor Freeland, and I've taken an interest in heritage and the preservation of heritage since I graduated from university. My submission is that you are asked to do 2 things today. One is to adopt the community plan that's been put on exhibition, and 2, to make 600 odd spot rezonings for heritage items. Now, if I could just address the conservation management plan, the study first. The study's been done, as the council's report says, in relation to creating significance pursuant to a document that was produced in 2001. That time's moved on, and the document now to assess significance is a 2003 version. And particularly what happens is that because of the provisions of the standard template, when you list a property, it gets any use, right? Any use, pursuant to a conservation management plan. But what we see is that these are used by people that own properties to turn around and extend them quite substantially and to induce other things into them. For example, the Fitzroy Inn has now got a number of cottages approved. The Maltings at Mittagong has got an enormous amount of development around it. Now, what should happen is that there should be curtilages appointed to each of these things. Now, what should happen is that this is an old system of listing each heritage item. We all went through the period where heritage items got destroyed, so the idea was you heritage list them. Now, that's fine, but under the way the template now works, you heritage list them and you give an opportunity for things to change and for the heritage significance to actually be destroyed. So what you should be doing is you should be creating conservation areas and then having items that contribute to the conservation areas listed within that and controlled by the DCP. Now, that's not what's proposed here. What's proposed here is 600 odd spot rezonings. The strategic plan for Windsor Carberry says there'll be no spot rezonings. Now, this is because of the way that the LEP works. Now, the situation is that, I don't understand. The 13th of December, the administrators in it says that the resolution of council reserve a note the report and council officers play no further role in the matter. Well, certainly council officers are playing a role in the matter. Now, in this report today, there's a listing for Craigieburn, and the listing says in the report of the council officers you choose all the DPs that relate to it. Now, the DPs for Craigieburn, there's a heritage house buried in there, I accept that, but it's the whole golf course. It's currently zoned RE2, so you will see a development take place on this because they're getting a rezoning. Now, this conservation management plan hasn't been presented to this committee. It said we'll take some items out of it and put it in the adopted plan. It's just it's a wrong system the way it's going, and it needs to go. As I said in my submission before, it all needs to be pulled together, and even the existing items, and put to a professional body, to not just one person to review it, but say a group of 5 to sit round and review the document and come up with a proposal that we will, because we're going to lose heritage by this adoption of this.
Thank you. Panel, are there any questions or comments for this speaker? Well, I disagree with you that we're doing 609 spot rezonings. We're not changing the zone. We're putting them on a heritage items list.
Correct.
So that's misleading, that comment, in my view. And I understand what you say about any use is possible, provided it ensures the conservation of the heritage item. That is possible. The council needs to be satisfied about that, though.
Yeah.
So it's not just open slather, as you seem to be suggesting. So I take your point about something like a golf course being given a heritage item status, and that might enable abuse of the heritage item listing when the significance is confined to a small part of the land. But at the moment we're going on. We go on the land. The land is listed as the heritage item, and the significance is expressed in the description.
Yeah, but the Court of Appeals held that that's not correct.
What's that, sorry?
The Court of Appeal has held that that's not correct. The Court of Appeal, in a judgment, Leeming, I think it was, held that the heritage item listed is the footprint of the building. Right now, this is proposing.
Well, maybe that's so, but the LEP lists the land.
It lists the land, and that's where the mistake is.
That's what we're not in a position to change that in this forum or in this exercise. But I understand. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. But also the point is that you take the Berrima Jail at the moment. It's not got a zoning, right? They've got a heritage listing. They're basing it on the heritage listing. They've got state significance. Means they haven't got to be controlled by the DCP. They haven't got to be any things that may not meet a zoning. It can be overruled. I mean, the likes of the Craigieburn site and the golf course of what it is, it will become a state significant development, and something that's been retained in zoning, everything will be lost. Now, there's individual properties. It's just not the appropriate way to do it. The appropriate way is conservation.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your comments, but I hear what you say. It's beyond the scope of our control, if you will, in this forum. Okay.
Thank you.
Next, I have Avi Bain and Colin Anzalak. I beg your pardon. Who do we have? Your name and address, please.
My name is Colin Anelzak. I'm an architect and I live at 6 Pioneer Street in Mittagong. And I'm actually representing Avi Barnes, who's the owner of 115 Main Street in Mittagong, which also contains number 2 Pioneer Street, which is a...
3-4?
I think so, yes.
I think it is. Yeah, it is. Please proceed. Yeah.
Avi's asked me just to come along and basically put a response to the peer review report, and I just might read a letter that I've sent through to council. I think Avi sent it through maybe on the 14th of this month. Anyway, I've been asked by Mr. Avi Barnes, the owner of the above property, which is 2 Pioneer Street, Mittagong, but it's also known as 115 Main Street, Mittagong, is the property, to write to you to lodge his objections to the findings of the heritage consultant, Mr. Robert Stas, in regard to the existing cottage at number 2, Pioneer Street, Mittagong, as published in the independent peer review panel meeting report agenda that we read here today. His report totally ignores the argument set out in the heritage report attached to our development application, which is with council. PAN 433418 is the number. And our argument is that the cottage is not fit for use as a residence without extensive demolition of the existing building to upgrade it to the current standards demanded by the current NCC and compulsory basic certificate compliance requirements that would be required for a residence, and it fails very badly in terms of solar access for a start and insulation. His subjective, talking about Mr. Stas, his subjective assessment that the dilapidated timber cottage is a physical and visual anchor point sounds quite romantic, but is questioned as Albert Lane clearly defines a boundary where substantial structures of stone or brick and not timber occupy the corner sites. We would also ask Mr. Stas what viable use he can see for the cottage should it be converted to a commercial use, and exactly what part of the existing cottage he thinks should be retained. A cost estimate attached to our development application has put a cost to restore the dwelling to its pre-fire layout condition. Sorry, the building has been damaged by fire. And we've estimated it to be in excess of $500,000 at today's prices, and these prices are increasing every day due to rises in material costs and labour shortages. This is a very expensive cost per square metre rate for a 100 square metre timber cottage. Mr. Baines believes that should the application for demolition be refused by council, then he would have to compulsorily fund the restoration work which be a restriction of trade regarding the commercially zoned site, which is the service station at 115 Main Street. The whole of the site is currently zoned commercial, while the northern end of the site containing the cottage is only rated as residential zoning. Mr Baines would actually like to suggest that should the council determine that the cottage should be retained, that they either purchase the cottage site from the current owners or possibly provide the necessary funds to complete the restoration work. He would also like council to acknowledge, I guess, that the other alternative he does has, and he's certainly considering, is to refer any rejection of the current development application before council immediately to the Land and Environment Court. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Panel, are there any questions or comments for this speaker?
Question. The current application with the council, is that just for demolition, or is it demolition and construction of a car park in association with the service station?
We would obviously flatten the site out and use it as best we could until he considered what he could actually use the site for.
Okay. And you said the application, the DA was supported by a heritage consultant report.
A heritage report.
Do you know who that was written by?
Yes, it was written by me.
By you? Okay.
Yeah.
Panel, are there any other questions? I don't know if I misunderstood you, but were you suggesting that residential zoned land would be used in conjunction with a commercial purpose on the adjoining land?
No. The current site, which is actually 115 Main Street, is a service station site.
Mm-hmm.
It has an area, I believe, of about 1,200 square metres, but a section of the rear, which is still zoned commercially, is rated by council because of the cottage. Yeah, so it's got a rating.
Thank you. I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next I have on the list Bundanoon Capital Investments, item 260. Could the speaker please introduce himself and explain his interest in the matter? Thank you.
Thank you very much to the panel. My name is Dharmit Garadia, and as stated, I'm representing Bundanoon Capital Investments, 38 to 40 Church Street, Bundanoon.
Just to clarify, this is item 260 we're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah. Please proceed.
Thank you. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank the panel once again for everyone's respective time in allowing us to express our views in regards to this matter. My name is Dharmit Garadia, and as we've said, I'm representing Bundanoon Capital Investments. First and foremost, I'd like to reiterate our objection to the heritage listing as proposed, the way it stands, due to the fact the process, once again, has not been one that is ordinarily expected for determining an item of heritage listing. We have set out our reasons previously in writing, when I last provided my personal response to the panel and in various written submissions through this process. In the interest of time, I won't repeat all of these today. However, I'd like to refer to them to the previous submissions that we've already made. Bundanoon Capital Investments have made it clear that with respect to the property at Eastteen, it could support the inclusion of components of the house as a local item under Schedule 5, on the basis that proper justification is provided. We would ask the panel to defer the matter in line with the recommendation of Robert Strass, as outlined in the most recent update provided. He has stated, and I quote, that in the event that a fully documented heritage assessment by an independent heritage professional showed there to be insufficient reason to make the local significance identification for this site, council should defer the matter, end quote. We believe that this detailed heritage assessment take place. Insufficient reason would be evident with respect to some of the items under consideration. Already, Mr. Stas has quoted, and I again quote, the submission discounts any significance relating to the garden setting, and I agree that without detailed examination, inclusions of gardens in individual listings should not proceed without substantial evidence of their significance beyond simply a pleasant setting for a building, end quote. The process to date has not been consistent with the merit-based guidelines required by Heritage New South Wales. In line with establishing precedents, it must be conducted under the guide of a professional, factual, and procedure-driven process, which we don't believe has happened to date. In saying this, we would like to advise the Council that the owners are considering a planning proposal for the site to be submitted to Council in the near future. We believe that a detailed assessment of the heritage merits of the residence is required, in line with the recommendation of Mr. Stas, which must occur as part of the process of our forthcoming application and planning proposal, which would include a site visit, an inspection of the dwelling given the current condition, and noting the raft of renovations and modernisations that have been made to the residence. If such a proposal was lodged to a gateway determination, we can commit that a detailed heritage study, along with a landscape architectural report, will be conducted on the property and any contributory buildings, curtilage and gardens. We would not wish for Council to waste their precious resources rushing through a process which will necessarily form part of a future application by our company, and especially given the volume of items of potential heritage value that you are considering as part of this recommendation. Almost done. Again, we don't object to the meritorious components of the residence, namely the house or aspects of the house being listed under Schedule 5, provided evidence is produced to substantiate its inclusion as a local item of heritage significance. Accordingly, we do not support the process conducted to date, as it is not evidence-based. Rather, a community heritage study can be open to broad interpretation and flawed assessment of prospective items. We would call on Council to withdraw or defer the prospective listing of Easting for proper heritage assessment in line with the conventional planning process. We would be happy to work with Council on this and would like to thank the Council once again for considering our position. Thank you.
Before I ask the panel if there are any questions or comments, you made a reference to a Stas recommendation to defer. What was the date of that? And
that was the one provided following the latest peer review. Yep.
Okay. Panel, are there any questions or comments for this speaker? Yes, Kelly.
You mentioned that you are proposing to submit a planning proposal later to Council. Have you already engaged in discussion with Council about that?
There has been a discussion, an email made for a meeting, yes.
Okay, you haven't actually had a...
We haven't had the meeting yet, no.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Any further questions? No, I think that's all. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So can you tell us your name and address now?
Kevin Packham, item 275, 9 Panorama Road, Bundanoon. So I object to the listing of my home at 9 Panorama Road for the reasons previously submitted in the first 3 of my submissions. My home is one of a small subset in your study that is not visible from the public domain. Therefore, it has not been visited by the study team, and your recommendations are based on a 2015 real estate listing and some historical notes dated 2008. However, I believe in proposing solutions. In my latest submission, I pointed out to Mr. Stas that the issue of the information upon which the recommendation is based could be solved by visiting my home. In response to that, Mr. Stas replied Inspection of the site by a council heritage officer could be arranged. I further pointed out on the issue of curtilage that currently curtilage is defined by the boundaries of the property, which ignores a pre-existing development application approved by council for a subdivision. Substantial work has been done on that subdivision, not by me, I might add, but by the previous owners, but for which I paid the consideration as part of the purchase price. I identified to Mr. Stas that I thought it would be reasonable for the curtilage to be amended based on that existing subdivision or existing development application. His response was that he recommends that any listing apply to the remnant site after the subdivision, if the title has been modified accordingly, or subject to a site inspection that defines a curtilage area to be agreed for the house and garden. Therefore, I request that a combined inspection of my home and the site to gather more relevant, in my opinion, heritage information and agree a redefined curtilage for my home be conducted as an input to your decision to include or not include my home on the heritage list. To that end, I ask when you deliberate today or tonight, you consider changing the current recommendation from a yes to a defer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Packham. Are there any questions or comments for this speaker from the panel? No, I think that was quite clear, and thank you.
Thank you.
Hello there, my name's Raymond Hurst, 1 Queen Street, Mittagong. I was struggling to hear what people were saying here. I have a bit of a hearing issue. During the whole time of this study project, I was never advised that this would be a compulsory to have my house listed. The project always indicated that it would be through discussions with the owner, and as my home was already protected within the heritage conservation area, so why does my home need to be individually listed? Does the council not have faith in its own development control plan within the conservation area of Mittagong? And the house next door to me is already heritage listed, which also inhibits me from any changes to the outside because of the DCP and my home location next to a listed item. So I have 2 issues to protect it. Now you want to add a third. Also, why are a number of homes listed and others are not? There are far more important homes than mine. Example, Natai Lodge, owned by very important people, a beautiful home, and yet the owners seem to have walked away with that one with an objection. So to me, the whole system doesn't seem to be consistent and fair. I am with the conservation in a conservation area. My observation are that reasons, letters, people put things in, I would like to be deleted from the list. I have conscientiously worked on my home, scraped back the exterior to discover what it really is, looked after it very sympathetically. It is my opinion, my feeling, that I do not want my house heritage listed. And doesn't that mean anything? I would like the same courtesy that others have received. Also, I'd like to state that my house, from what I can see in report, has no significantly important history behind it that warrants it to be listed, unless you can prove otherwise. I would like to know. Also, has council done anything about, if people have their houses listed, rate reductions and land tax reductions? Has that been thought about? That would cost council a lot of money. Have you budgeted for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? No questions from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, David Dredge. Do we have David Dredge in the room? 109? No? Ten Elm Street, Bowral. Mr. Dredge not being present, we'll move on to Bob Morgan. Now, next to the name I have rezoning Harvey Farm. I should add that we're not concerned here with the rezoning of Harvey Farm.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the panel. My respects to elders past, present and community. As you already know, Mr. Chairman, I'm an elder of the Paramount Nation. I'm here today with respects to Lot 1 in DP 119043 and also Lot 1 in DP 79951.
Sorry, before you go further, can you tell us what the item number is for that? Do you know that?
No,
Okay.
the item number is not known to me.
287.
These are the
Sorry
lot
to interrupt you, we just...
These are the lot numbers of Harvey Farm.
Yep, that's okay. Yeah.
Um,
Please go ahead.
On the Heritage website, 9 articles have been found on each lot, according to site cards lodged, but the reports have not been uploaded. And we would ask that no outcome be determined because the reports have not been uploaded and we have not been able to assess them and see if there's areas of significance to our people. Now, the site this is on, the whole 600 acres, has been declared a site of significant Aboriginal heritage, and that was declared by me on the 28th of June. No reports have been uploaded, and the reports we are looking for are the Cass report and the Bowral South Village Centre report. It would be a fitting end to NAIDOC week if these could be made available to us. We have an information request in for the Cass report. Our fallback position is that if this is not granted and you are going to put a heritage order, that you put a heritage order over the entire property, as the site cards don't relate to the property that is not going to be heritage listed. There's some confusion there as to the site cards have been recorded against the property that is to be heritage listed, where the excavations, the site excavations, were done on the property that's not going to be heritage listed. And this was the site of a reported commercial centre. I ask from our people that the proper respects be followed and the proper procedure be followed in this regard, and that a full Aboriginal cultural heritage assessment be extended to the whole area before any granting of any kind can proceed. That's the end of my statement. Thank you. Thank you for your listening to me today.
Mr. Morgan, panel, are there any questions or comments for this speaker? I just think we need to be clear about not conflating a rezoning process.
Excuse me, could you speak? I suffer like the other
Sorry,
gentleman
okay.
with a bit of hearing.
I just think
hearing loss.
we're getting things sort of overlapping here that are, in fact, in a planning sense, separate. We've got a rezoning process that's underway at Harvey Park, but we're here to consider the particular item, the house and garden at Harvey Park. So, as I understand it, most of what you're talking about will be dealt with through the rezoning process.
Well, we're saying that any heritage order should extend to the entire property and not just to some of it.
Okay.
Until there is a full Aboriginal cultural heritage assessment on the entire property.
So do I take you to mean you would recommend that the item 287 Harvey Park House and Garden be deferred
Yes.
pending the fuller process of the rezoning of the release area?
Yes. 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 Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I think three names which I understand, I'm sure if they're all from Exeter, associated, the first name of the three is Martin McGrain. Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. Martin McGrain, please come forward. Please give us your name and address, please, Mr. McGrain.
My name's Martin McGrain. I live in Middle Road, Exeter. I'm 48, have been there for 25 odd years. I'm an architect. I'd like to thank the panel and the council for the opportunity to speak today. The item that we are collectively, I suppose, addressing is just the Exeter Heritage Conservation Area and how it's been dealt with in the peer review. And from my point of view, my wife, my family and mine, we'd like to support the submission that EVA, Exeter Village Association, has made in respect to the peer review done by Robert Stars, and ask the panel to adopt that recommendation. The relative intactness of Exeter Village, only other comparable villages in Wingecarribee Shire, probably being Burrawang and Berrima in that regard, justifies, in our view, a reasonable envelope or curtilage of protection from inappropriate and detrimental future development. To that end, the EVA submission to Mr. Stas's peer review suggests, as he recommended, a wider curtilage than was originally proposed. I support, EVA representatives will speak for EVA, but I support Robert Stas's recommendation in his peer review, and which I'm pretty sure suggests not deferring that matter, but consulting with the community, which is what we are doing now in respect of the envelope or the curtilage. In extending the curtilage as we're suggesting in the EVA submission, this does not inhibit or restrict owner rights or council's intentions regarding potential subdivision, residential urban consolidation in line with the LEP, but will serve to apply an additional level of control to ensure better building design to complement rather than detract from the village and its traditional setting. Recent history in Exeter, particularly in Middle Road, and as I said, we've lived there for 25 years and I'm an architect, illustrates that we as a community cannot rely on the ability or motivation of future residents or developers to promote good quality design which respects heritage values and settings that has taken over a century to create. Our proposed amendment to the HCA curtilage or envelope will mean sensible areas of still undeveloped land adjacent to the village core will be protected from unworthy development, providing a protective curtilage to our village core. The vehicular gateways to the village core from the north, the southeast and the west will similarly be protected from ugly gateway development. I'll continue.
Just conclude if you could.
Might be long, yep. We will not need, therefore, to rely on the rural protection controls that are currently being considered by Council for such protection. Our proposed curtilage provides clear, simple and logical heritage conservation area boundaries, which include Elsmore Road to the west, the unmowed road, which is the extension of Jensen's Lane to the south, and the public path extending from School Lane and Rockley Road to the east and Indigo Lane to the north. The heritage conservation area is important. It provides an additional and necessary overlay assessment to prevent inappropriate development. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel, are there any questions or comments for this speaker? No, thank you. I think that's understood. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Also on the list, Stephen Blackman. Please come forward. If you can just give us your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Stephen Blackman. I live at 20 Wilson's Lane in Exeter. I'm the acting chair of the Exeter Village Association, which represents the voices of Exeter, Whereye and Sutton Forest communities. A subcommittee has spent almost 6 months' work on our written submissions, having canvassed both our members and the communities for input via several public meetings, email questionnaires, and noting their responses. Our purpose in speaking today is to reinforce our written submissions for an extended Exeter Village Heritage Conservation Area and the adoption of an Exeter Landscape Conservation Area. I assume you've had the opportunity to peruse both. We urge you to adopt what we have submitted and include the extension to the, which includes the extension to the Exeter Heritage Conservation Area as recommended by your peer reviewer, Mr. Robert Stuss. We want strengthened controls for development application assessments by council over the area, which naturally would include discussions with all affected neighbours and interested parties. Eva asked the Council to adopt our recommendation for the HCA as submitted in order to better protect the historic, cultural and physical character of the whole village. We also request you adopt in principle our submission for a landscape conservation area around Exeter Village as a forerunner to assessing the larger Berrima Sutton Forest Exeter cultural landscape, which was proposed or as proposed by the National Trust and Colleen Morris. You would be aware, obviously, that Exeter was the preferred centre for the Badgery Empire from the 1850s in recognition of the superior fertile soils and agricultural capacity. Because it is in a basin that was surrounded by generous rural views, it afforded the Badgery family the opportunity to oversee their substantial 10,000-acre land grants, which now represent vistas of exceptional natural beauty. It is precisely these attributes that the residents of Exeter, Sutton Forest and Whereye wish to retain, as it forms part of the same area which has been acknowledged by the National Trust and Colleen Morris as being of national cultural importance, as noted in Mr. Stassi's report. Exeter Village Association is eager to start work on both submissions and offers to assist in their implementation, working with the council's experts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Panel, are there any questions or comments for this speaker? No, I don't think so. Thank you very much. Thirdly, Angela Williamson.
Good morning, panel. My name's Angela Williamson. I live at 71 West Grove Road, Exeter. Thank you for the peer-reviewed community heritage study, a fine document which I sincerely hope has the teeth to confound inevitable state government pressure. Now, additional to my written submission, I'd like to add, the Shire can be very confident of an increase in tourism popularity if we keep what we have. Why? Appin and Wilton are scheduled to have thousands of new homes in the next few years. We are already seeing a burgeoning of these cheek-by-jowl, paint-by-numbers McMansions galumphing southward both sides of the Hume Highway. Wingecarribee has some dear little pockets of treasures. Berrima instantly comes to mind, along with villages like Burrowang, Colavale, Balmoral and Exeter, and some of the charming residential streets of Bowral, Mittagong and Bundanoon. It's the villages that hold the key to the charm that appeals to city dwellers. Visitors can and do buy fresh veg at a country market, have a cuppa in the quaint local store, stay at a cute little B&B and enjoy looking at the Four Seasons gardens behind the picket fences. Rural visitors greet tourists as they travel between villages. If Wingecarribee keeps this ambience, it will buy itself many tourist dollars and keep its own happy residents. A perfect example is in the Sunshine Coast hinterland. Montville, Mullaney, Flaxton, Mapleton and Witter. Every weekend, these lovely historical places are a magnet for visitors from Brisbane and further afield. I urge Wingecarribee to proactively preserve the remnants of our built heritage, the places that have been recommended for heritage listing, ensure new dwellings are sympathetic with their environment, and rural vistas are maintained, the so-called green between. Night skies are also important. Every time a development happens, someone insists on curb and channel, sealed roads and street lights which are automatically set and left to run all night without a single house in sight. In Exeter and Bundanoon and other places in the Shire, we want the darkness to see the stars. It's one of the joys of living here. City people have lights. This is the countryside, and we don't. Diversity is key. Our villages need to stay different from city and suburbs to attract visitors. I ask Council to hold firmly to compliance with its own DCP and adopt Exeter Village Association's Heritage Conservation Area and Landscape Conservation Area recommendations.
Thank you. Are there any questions, panel, for this speaker or comments?
Thank you.
No, thanks. Angela Williamson. Finally, I have Dennis McManus. Is Dennis McManus here? Yep. Could you just introduce yourself, please, sir?
Fine. Thank you, Chair. Dennis McManus is my name. I live in Kangaloon. I've lived in the Shire for 25 years. My work career was in planning and heritage. 15 years in state planning, 25 years in state heritage. Before I retired, I was a senior heritage officer at the Heritage Council for 25 years. I've been a co-coordinator on the heritage study that you're looking at now as a result of the peer review. The study team that I belong to thanks the council for the opportunity to make the submission. We were invited to do so. Both previous review and then the recent one in the exhibition in June. It's appreciated that time's now short, so I just want to confine my comments to two matters only. I've also arranged for a digital copy to be sent to the council so that you've got the full information. Hopefully you've received that, Chair. The first one is the business about 13 items not agreed to by the peer review. The study team is pleased to note that several of our recommendations to the June submission this year have been agreed to, which is good. However, the study team's call for reinstatement of the proposed listing of 15 items has not been agreed to, with the exception of the camellias and pin oaks in Station Street, leaving 13 items in contention. I might say this is against a total recommendation by the reviewer to take out 70 items, so we're talking about a relatively small number in contention. Most of these relate to the stance of the review report that the Heritage Conservation Area listing is sufficient protection for heritage items. But a major problem is that the current development control provisions need to be strengthened. In this regard, we know this recommendation 11 of your main report in front of you does cover this, and we do support that. There's a business about the recommendation 11 recommends contributory building mapping be undertaken for all existing and proposed heritage conservation areas. So that needs to happen, but of course that needs to happen very quickly if we can have that. We did recommend this as part of our June submission. The main point I want to make here is that the study team's view is that where items meet the threshold of a high heritage criteria assessment and they're relatively intact, they should be included as heritage items in their own right. And that is consistent with the views expressed by Robert Stass in the peer review. It's also in line with the dictum for heritage that items should be listed on the basis of significance and managed in a fair and positive way. Comments have been made about heritage assessment not being an empirical process and some degree of subjectivity. I think it needs to be said, however, that the whole of the study is really supported by a major evidence-based material. The particular items, I've put those in the digital submission to you. We're really asking for 13 items in Bowral to be looked at again by the committee, by the panel. They were only 3 of those items were the subject of objection, and we would respectfully suggest that all be listed. The second option may be to defer the ones where objection took place. I've given a list of those items, so perhaps there's no need to go through them with you. The second matter is just really a housekeeping one, which I think probably will be addressed with by council officers. I noticed that there's, at the moment, Robert Stass has agreed to change, to recommend the Mittagong Conservation Area proceed, and also to take out the, to include the camellias and the pin oaks in Station Street, but that doesn't seem to appear anywhere, so that needs to be picked up. Perhaps I've missed something. And lastly, 33 Merrigang Street, Robert Stass has recommended that be deferred for possible consideration. They're really the matters that I wish to raise. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Panel, are there any questions or comments? My understanding was that no questions or comments from the panel. My understanding, excuse me, was that the camellias and pin oaks have been listed?
They are to be listed now.
Are to be listed,
That's
I
right.
should say.
The study team had recommended them. Robert Stas firstly took them out, and now they've come back in. Yeah, that's right. Thank you very much.
I think that's all. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution, all speakers, and thanks for those attending for your interest. I beg your pardon. Sorry, my microphone was off. Did you, everybody hear that last little bit? Thanks for being here. Thanks, speakers. We're grateful for your contributions, and we will now move into closed session for deliberation. There's a lot to think about. Thanks very much.